Hello, Unique Couples community. Welcome back to the Unique Couples Marriage Marathon. We are here for our second session. So go ahead and type in hashtag live squad. Let us know where you're watching from. For those of you that'll be watching the replay, go ahead and type in hashtag replay. We're going to be in for a great time today here on the Unique Couples Marriage Marathon. We are here from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. And you don't want to miss none of the sessions. Our first session was a great session where Linda and we spoke on communication burnout, overcoming communication burnout. That's what we spoke on at 10 o'clock. At 11 a.m., which is now, we're going to be talking on we have special guests who's going to be talking on the topic overcoming marital conflict. Dr. Elvis and Mr. Stephanie Burrows, who will be introduced very soon. And then at 12 p.m., we have another presenters who will be coming up, Glenn and Keishel Davis, and they're from Nassau, Bahamas, and they will be talking on the topic overcoming lack of couples vision. And then at 1 p.m., we have Tracy and Deborah Wood who will be talking on overcoming differences. And at 2 p.m., we have Kemar and Deanne Johnson who will be talking on overcoming intimacy struggles. So you're going to be in for a great time today. So you don't want to miss none of the sessions today.
Yes, go ahead and share. Let someone know. Like we say, you share to help, okay? Share to help because you don't know who will need to hear exactly that particular piece of information or hear that story or hear that challenge that a couple went through and really overcame. So we don't want to take any more of our speakers' time. We are so excited to have Dr. Elvis and Mrs. Stephanie Burrows here with us. And I'm so happy that, they have agreed to be our mentors as well. And so we're happy for that as well, because, we're all about learning. We're all about improving. We're all about just being better, better wives, better persons, better everything as it relates to our lives. So, hey, no one has arrived. So we're all in the process of continually improving. And so we're all excited about that. Yeah.
So Dr.
I want to say something. Okay, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Dr. Elvis Burrows, he is the senior pastor of the Central Zion Baptist Church in 8 Mile Rock.
And he also presently is there too. Yes. Mrs. Stephanie Burrows is there too, actively working at his side and definitely participating in women's ministry.
Yes, he also presently serves as the first vice president of the Grand Bahama Christian Council and a volunteer chaplain for the Public Health Authority at the Ram Memorial Hospital. He is also a professional marriage and family counselor, as well as a conference speaker.
And Stephanie is also a professional marriage and family counselor, and she also got her degree and is working with couples. And you can also find her on Dove 103.7. She is the voice of Marriage Matters. So you can hear from her there as she, and of course, both of them work with couples in their ministry.
Yeah, so Dr. Burrows, along with his wife, Stephanie, they are constantly involved in family counseling, relationship coaching, and mentoring, marriage retreats, and other family enrichment activities, both here in the Bahamas and abroad. So he enjoys teaching and preaching the word of God.
She does too. She does the teaching as well. She has taught marriage and family life. She's taught in the Department of Marriage and Family Counseling, and something very special. I think a lot of people might even know her for this ministry, the Princess Court Ministry, which is a nationwide ministry, a program that trains, empowers members of we have our young ladies between the ages of 5 to 18 years old, and they can be involved in that program. She is the founder and executive director for that ministry, and that has served over 5,000 young ladies. So that is awesome.
Yes. Dr. Burrows also published his first two books, Daddy, Please Don't Go, a book that addresses the problems of an absent father, and Fire from the Pulpit.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. So you have it. You have it. You wanted to say more. Eh?
So Dr. Burrows and his wife Stephanie have been married
Oh,
since
yeah.
the 27th of November, 1982, and are the parents of 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls, a daughter-in-law, and 2 adorable granddaughters.
Oh, we did not reach that number, and I don't think we will unless we adopt in our, after Victory K goes, then we can adopt. But currently we are at 3, and I am happy because it feels like we are at 30, like we have 30
Yes.
children.
Yeah, so we don't want to take up no more of their time. We're just glad to have Dr. Elvis and Mrs. Stephanie Burrows, who's going to be talking on the topic overcoming marital conflict. Hello, Dr. Burrows and Mrs. Burrows.
Good morning to you, Vito and Linda. What a privilege and a pleasure to have us with you today. And you could not have chosen a better day to have us on the program. It's a holiday,
Yes.
Emancipation Day. And so, I mean, we are just delighted to be here. As you were reading a bio, I really appreciate the kind introduction. And so we are in our zone. We love helping other couples. We've been at it for a while. We've been in the trenches, but still learning each other. Every year you get a new spouse. So you have to learn that new one you get and try to make it work. But thank you so much for having us on the program today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to sharing. We're going to take our notes, and we're inviting everyone. If you have questions, go ahead, put your questions in the chat. Let us know your takeaways, what stood out for you. We are going to give out prizes at the end of this from the first session and for the session at the same time. We have some Amazon gift cards to give away. So stay engaged. Put those questions in the chat and then share this link. Share the link. And then, of course, invite your family and friends to join us as well.
Yeah, so we're going to turn it over to Dr. and Mrs. Burrows.
And Linda, if we, you will see the questions and give it to us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Do that.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning. You're still in the morning.
Good morning,
everyone, and thank you so much for joining. We are so privileged to be here to share with couples this morning. And our topic today is conflicts in marriage and how do we solve conflicts in marriage. What did you say?
Overcoming.
Yeah,
same thing, yeah.
Overcoming conflicts in marriage. And so that means that marriages do have conflicts, right?
Every marriage. And Stephanie, we know that on the day we get married, everyone is so excited. Everyone feels as though it will last in that same way forever. We are with friends, we are with families, we are dancing, we are at the reception. We're hearing all the good toast and everything else. And maybe conflicts are the furthest thing away from our minds. But mind you, some people have conflicts even before the marriage. We hope and they are able to work through it, but it doesn't matter how good it started out. We can assure you, and I'm not trying to discourage you, but having been in it almost 40 years, I can assure you, you will have conflicts because every marriage has conflicts. We have to put that out there right at the very outset, Stephanie.
Yes, and conflict is not bad. I want to really let you know that for a marriage to have a conflict, that does not mean that you are a bad spouse. It does not mean that your marriage is a wreck or your marriage is no good. It does not mean that you could never solve the conflict, and you should be able to solve most, I would say, all conflicts. And so having a conflict is not bad. And I would also say having a conflict is good in a marriage, and having a conflict is usual in a marriage. Conflicts will come. You had conflicts with your brothers and sisters. If you have siblings in your home, you probably had conflicts with your parents, and you had conflicts at work, conflicts at church. Everywhere we would see conflicts. Now, some conflicts are not too hard to solve. Some conflicts may be hard to solve, but you should be able to solve your conflicts.
And Stephanie, often when we hear the word conflict, and we don't hear that word maybe much in a marriage, you may hear, well, we are having a disagreement, we are having a fight, we are not getting along, things are not going well. But ultimately, we use those words interchangeably. But what it means when you are not getting along and you are not able to see each other's viewpoint, you just can't agree. There is a battle, there's a fight, there's a strong disagreement. It all boils down to the fact that you're having a conflict. And we often ask, well, let's suppose we needed to give a definition for a conflict. What is a conflict? A conflict is that, I would say, that disagreement or that fight that erupts when what you want, you are not able to get at that particular time, or your spouse does not acquiesce to you or give you what you want. And so is that difference between, hey, this is what I want. For example, maybe I want sex, but you want to sleep. And then we get into an argument about that. And if you're not careful, it drags on and it erupts into something much bigger. So when what we want doesn't line up with what our spouse wants to give us at that particular time, that becomes the seedbed for a conflict, Stephanie.
Yes, I would totally agree. And when we are having a conflict, it comes from any area of our lives. Mm-hmm. It could be a conflict that you and the couple may not have agreed on. It could be a conflict, maybe a step parent brought into the marriage or caused between the spouses. And sometimes the conflicts that we may bring from work and then start on our spouse, but we didn't mean to, but just the pressure and being angered from that conflict at work. He came home and created a conflict. And so those are some things we also should look out for. What is causing the conflict? Where did it come from? How long have we had this conflict? But most of all, what is the conflict? Because many times people are fighting and they forgot what they are fighting for, or having a strong argument, I would say. And then it goes, branches all over the place, and you forgot what it was all about from the beginning. Hey, how did we get to money when we started on the children's lunch? How we got there? What is the conflict? What are we trying to solve? So we have to even be conscious of what started the conflict, or what is the conflict all about.
Yeah, and Stephanie, I just want to throw this in as a sidebar. I talk to couples many times who I would hear them say, well, I've never seen my parents in a conflict. I've never seen my parents argue. And I would say, quite often is that maybe you've never seen them in an argument or in a conflict, but trust me, I'm sure that throughout the length of their marriage, they must have had at least only one or two conflicts. And there are parents who would say, well, it's not good for us to argue in the front of the children or let our children know that we have a conflict. But I differ on that. And I would say to parents who may be tuned in today is that it is not a bad thing when a child sees a parent or the parents having a conflict and get to see them solve that conflict in an amicable way, in a way where they're not throwing pots and pans or punching the walls or, being mean to each other. Because ultimately, when a child grows up or when, we become adults, if we don't have a model for how to solve conflicts, it becomes even more, I would say, problematic for us. And so I just throw that in there to say to parents, it's okay to let your children see you discussing an issue and being able to solve it in a way that, brings back harmony and brings back peace to the home. And so that is okay. And so, Stephanie, what we're saying, a conflict happens when our perception, I would say, or what we want doesn't match with what the other person wants to give us at that particular time.
Yes. And so there goes the clash, but then we must solve it. We must solve it and try to, when we say solve it, let it be solved, because we're also finding out that many couples do not solve their conflicts. And they would say, we keep having this argument. It seems like this argument cannot go away. Whatever happens, it keeps coming back. Those are times, or the time when we would suggest try to seek a third party, somebody else who can intervene or who can be there to hear both sides and be fair. Now, that third party, both of you should agree on who that is, and be comfortable with who you have chosen. And that could be anybody who is a mature Christian, I would say, or mature couple that you have seen who you feel is doing well and who have your best interests at heart, and who can also speak truth into your life, not just to make you feel good or to make you feel like as though it's somebody else's fault, but who can speak the truth and let you know how they see it can be solved.
Yeah, and Stephanie, we would spend the last part of the program giving some tips and ideas of how we overcome conflicts. But I just want to say that conflicts in a marriage come from so many different ways. We bring some into the marriage from our family backgrounds. I call it our cultural backgrounds. And when we hear the word culture, we often think of, oh, maybe I am an American and he is a Bahamian, or she is from the Turks and Caicos and I am from Jamaica. And we figure, well, the culture is two different country or two different geographical location. But what we have discovered in our years of counseling, if you grew up on the left side of the street and your spouse on the other side of the street, you come from two different cultures. Every home has its unique culture. And so when we get married, believe it or not, we bring into that marriage the cultures that we were brought up in. Every home does things differently. And so when we come into that marriage, some people come from a single family home, some come from divorced home, some come from two parents home. The way they were disciplined and the way their parents dished out discipline and punishment may look very different from the other person's, from their spouse's home. And so if we are not able to navigate and work around those basic issues, we are bound to have conflicts. And even the way we saw our parents solve conflicts, as I mentioned briefly earlier, also helps to set the stage and give us a sort of a model for how we do it. But I can say, I will say to us today, if it was not done as right in your home as you thought it could have been, I commend Vito and Linda for a program like this, where we are sharing, and there is a better way to solve conflicts than becoming so disagreeable, becoming in a physical fight, which can lead to abuse, which can lead to all sorts of problems. So there is a better way to solve our conflicts. And Stephanie, we will jump into that very shortly. But one of the main things is, what did we learn in our family of origins? And you must think of where your spouse came from, and your spouse must think of where you came from, and talk about it.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking about communication in the first segment of this marathon session we are having today. And so talking about it, it begins by talking about it. If you can't solve a conflict if you don't communicate about it, and if you don't communicate about it, you will forever have a conflict, Stephanie.
Yes, that is true. And too, when you talk about parents, if my parents might have solved conflicts different from his parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, as a couple, we need to see how we could marry the good from what we have experienced or have been taught, to know now how we can solve it in our marriage. Because whatever he had experienced and I had experienced could also cause a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
But then, being two different people again, and the two spouses, now you have to decide or talk about or find help and how you can solve your conflicts, and quickly. I would say not to let the conflicts go, now you may need some time to investigate. You may need some time. Even people need cooling off time. That's okay what time you need. But I would say still make an appointment, make a decision, a conscious, intentional decision that we will come back together to solve this conflict. Many times when a spouse, I would say, get upset, they cannot talk at that time. And they feel as though if I speak, I may say the wrong thing, I may do the wrong thing. It's okay. Be willing to give your spouse that space until they are ready to come together to talk about it. Some couples go out of the home, they have to take a drive. Maybe another one may have to go on the phone and talk to a good friend or somebody. But if you need time before you come back together to solve the problem, take the time. And spouses, be willing to give each other that space and time they need. But again, I will emphasize, be intentional in coming back at that. It may be hard because trying to talk about conflicts and hard things is not easy, especially to your spouse. But you have to go through it. It's just a part of marriage. But be intentional in coming back together and talking about it to solve it. Not just talk about it, about what happens, but how are we going to solve this so that it does not come back again? And I don't know if this is just Bahamian, local, or all over the world, but we always say they just sweep it under the rug. And you know what? It doesn't go away. The rug just keeps on getting higher and higher.
Yeah, and Stephanie, that brings us to something that you touched on earlier. You know, whenever a conflict erupts in the marriage, what I see happens so often is that we talk to other people about the conflicts that is going on between us two, in opposed to first and foremost talking to the other person. So as we try to overcome our conflicts, we have to be intentional and careful that we identify what this conflict is, not to your mother, not to your sister or your brother or friend or best friend, but you first and foremost bring that up with your spouse, because many times what we perceive to be a huge problem and something that's hard to solve, you may be surprised it may have only been just a small misunderstanding. And when you talk to the other person and you articulate what is bothering you, you may be surprised as to how easily that issue is solved. And so you want to first and foremost talk to each other about the issue. Identify what the issue is. And I think you might have mentioned it a few minutes ago that many times we are arguing and we are all over the place. We are not focused on what the real issue is. If you don't know what the issue that you are talking about, or you don't know the source of the conflict or the core issue, how would you know when it is solved? You have to know what you're trying to solve before you can solve it. If you're doing something in your house, you're fixing a piece of equipment, or just clearing up part of the house, how would you know when you're done if you don't know or haven't identified adequately what it is? So Stephanie, I would say to couples is that you have to really identify, honey, or whatever you call your spouse, I need to talk to you about the way we discipline the children. I am not happy with this, or let's talk about this because it doesn't seem to be working. And so, when you come to the table, we are talking about how we discipline the children, not how we spend the money, not about in-laws or sex or religious issues or how we spend our leisure time, but we are talking about how we discipline the children. So know what you are talking about, know what the conflict is, and you focus on that until there's some solution or an agreement to say, hey, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, we are talking about the problems, but we are soon getting to the solutions. But I wanted to add to that too. Many times when we go and speak to others, especially if it is our family members and they're feeling sympathetic with us. When we have now come to our spouses and we solve the conflict, the family member or the friend still feel as though the conflict is going on, or they still have that extra, what would you call it? Not hatred, I don't want to call that strong word.
And
Something against the spouse, because the spouse, they feel as though the spouse was unfair to you. And so that causes them and the spouse probably to have a little distance. So that's why we always would advise not to go to a family member who would always remember. They will remember longer than you would your conflict. And they would always look at your spouse in that vision or in that view or that eyesight. They'll always look at them. So be careful who you talk to. That is what we were really trying to say in a nutshell. And family should probably be one of the last, if they are not mature enough to know how to separate the relationship from the issue. If you think they can be, then with all means, go ahead. But many times we find that families, especially mothers, cannot separate the issue from the relationship.
Especially when it comes to their sons, that could be an issue. But the other thing I would say is that when you find yourself in a strong disagreement as a couple, before you get into the heat of the battle, always remember that, look, we are in this for the long haul. We are in this indefinitely. Remember the vows you made on the day you got married, for better or for worse, in sickness and in health, for forsaking all others, keep thee only unto thyself, or words to that effect. And so when a conflict begins, think of the vows you made. Think of the relationship as long-term, and that would help to inform your conversation, help to inform the tone, the words you say, because words are destructive. And so be careful of the words you say in the heat of battle, because when the battle is done and you have to do what I call the cleanup and to the damage control, it becomes so much more difficult if you were condescending to your spouse, if you were mean and calling him or her derogatory names. And so you want to measure your words so that when you get back on good terms, that those residual effects of the mean words are not lingering in your spouse's mental, I would say, memory. And so choose your words carefully. Remember, your spouse is not your enemy. Your spouse is that special gift that God has given to you. And maybe sometimes when you're in the heat of the battle, he or she doesn't feel like a gift. It feels like a curse maybe at times. But think of your vows. I can guarantee you, if you go back to the vows you make on the day you get married, that would help to guide you as you go through the struggles that you will have. You will have struggles, but always keep in mind the long-term view that I and my spouse, we are in this for the long haul. We have 2 children. We have 3 children. We want our family to always be together. We want our children to know that, yes, we can have an argument, but we can come out of it in a way that we are still loving each other and not being mean and condescending and derogatory and just not caring about one another, Stephanie. That's possible. Not always easy, but possible.
Yes. So are you ready for the solutions here?
We're going through them as we go. And so remember your vows. And so I would say another thing, as you go through a conflict, the way you begin a conflict would always determine how that conflict ends. And so I would say to start it up in a soft way, in a caring way, a loving way. But if you start out by attacking each other, how do you expect that to end? In most cases, it will not end good. And so we would often call it a softened startup, a soft startup where you saying, let us talk about this. And you name the issue, you identify it. and then you were able to go, at a better pace. Boy, but if you start at 100 miles per hour, where would you end up? So Stephanie, we encourage couples to start it up softly. Soft words still turn away wrath. Harsh
Kind
words,
words.
yeah, harsh words stir up anger. So get in the habit of starting up your solutions, or how you present it to your spouse, not being accusing him or her, but simply presenting and articulating to them what the issue is, and you do so in a soft way, if and when possible. And if you're not able to do that, then you need a cooling off period. And I think you may have mentioned that earlier. Take a time, take 5 minutes, whatever, because some persons need more time to, what I would say, process information. Everyone doesn't process information the same way. So you may have to take a time out to do that, but start up as soft as you can. And that helps to lead it in a way, Stephanie, that it doesn't get out of control.
Yes. So the number one is try to have a soft start with kind words. Because like we say, if you start off with a high pitch, with anger tone, that more than likely is how it will end and may not get solved. So always start off kindly, like the Bible says, a soft answer turns away wrath. So start off softly.
And then Stephanie, what you also want to do, and we talk about, you may have to pick a time when you want to talk, because saying the right thing at the wrong time can be catastrophic in a marriage. There are some recurring issues. This issue keeps coming up, and we are not getting anywhere. And so there are times when you may have to say, hey, after the children are put to bed, or sometime in the middle of the day, we will talk about this issue. I want us to talk about this issue. So there are some times when you have to pick the right time, because I can assure you, even at the best of intention, saying the right thing can turn out not very good if the timing is wrong. Because if a spouse just walks through the door after a hard day at work, the boss might have been on them all day. They may have had a very stressful time, and they walk into the house to be greeted with an issue that has been ongoing for a while. What do you think would happen? And so pick your time. I know there are times when we have to, some women in particular and men, I have to get this off my chest. I can't sleep unless I tell him how I feel, a piece of my mind. I was waiting on this all day long. And he comes in the house, she comes in the house, you shoot that missile, that ballistic missile, and it hits the target, and there's an explosion. Harsh words. And so there may be times, and there are times when you have to pick when you will deal with that issue. And Stephanie, we know about that. I remember when we were in seminary, there were times when it was a very stressful time, while I was preparing for ministry. And I would always know when you had an issue, after the children would go to bed, you would come and sit at the dining table, and I would say, oh my, I better get my coffee. This is going to be a bit, and invariably I knew there was an issue, but you have to pick a time.
Yes. And I always like to say, set an appointment.
Yes.
You set appointments with other people, and if you need to with your spouse, set an appointment. I need to talk to you, and let's do that tomorrow night at 8 p.m. when it's more quiet. And nothing is wrong with that. And so in doing that, your spouse is prepared and you are prepared. And then your spouse knows that I need to meet at this time. And so I'm not going to take any phone calls. She has something that she needs to discuss, or he has something that he needs to discuss. And so that gives everybody time to prepare themselves mentally, physically, or maybe even in all the colleagues, I would say, because two is it's also a good idea to say, you know what, I really need to talk to you tonight about the bills that are piling up. At least they already know what the appointment is, what the issue is, and maybe they can already start to formulate in their minds what they need to say, because sometimes somebody may have more information than the other. He might have said, oh, you see that bill that you talked about? Well, I have already spoken to the bank or so ever about that, and we have decided such and such. I just did not get around to saying everything. Or when it's time for the conversation, you can decide now how we can best handle this. But I like to hear appointments or a set time. That is so important, so everybody can be prepared. And like I said earlier, it's even a good idea to say what you want to talk about, so the spouse could be prepared to when they come to the table with the conversation.
And Stephanie, you mentioned appointment, but what I'm going to say right now is so simple, but it works. When there's a conflict, if you know you are wrong, be quick to acknowledge, be quick to apologize, be quick to ask for forgiveness. And so often that's the solution. But you know, in marriage, especially in the early days, and for you who may be on the platform who have been married for just a few years or months, less than 5 years, a year, months, see, there's a tendency for wanting to be right, for wanting to win. I can't afford to lose this argument. See, if we approach it from that viewpoint, we've lost already. It's not about I win and you lose. It has to be where there's a win-win situation. So if you know you are wrong, let's suppose you had agreed to be home at, say, 6 o'clock for dinner because you and your spouse had planned to go visit someone, but you come half hour late and you walk in as though, hey, so what's the big deal? And your spouse brings it up and say, hey, I feel disrespected when you don't honor our commitment, or you don't honor your commitment to me. I feel disrespected. And then it erupts, oh, well, I had to do this or I had to do that. If you can say, I am sorry, if you want to give an explanation, acknowledge, admit, apologize, and you will be surprised how amicably a solution can be reached. But so often we want to win. It's not about winning for one side and thinking that the other side would have lost the argument. Is making sure that we come out as winners. You two are on the same team. You're not opposition. You are on the same team. If one wins, both of you win.
One loses.
If one loses, then you both lose. And so see the other person as a part of the team, equally contributing partner in this relationship. The one you love, the one you sleep with, the one you eat with, the one you are co-parenting with. And when you put all of that into perspective, you would want to solve your conflict. You would want to have a harmonious relationship, because you know and I know, if you've been married for a while, when things are not right in the house, nothing else is working. You know, when there's coldness and iciness in the house, nothing else goes well. So acknowledge, admit if you know you are wrong. And sometimes we know we are wrong, you know. Now, I've heard it said before, I don't have any stats on it, but they said that women don't like to apologize. You know, they would do other things, they go on and on. And that's true sometimes, but men don't like it either. So that's a talk show for another day. But, you know, just avoid that. And then as you try to overcome your conflicts and you are in the heat of it, please do not call your spouses names. And Stephanie, we know that happens. You know, when we get angry, we call them names. And so what I am saying is, do your best to attack the issue, attack the problem. not the person whom you are married to. Attack the problem, attack the issue. But what we do, we turn it on the individual. We see it in the workplace, we see it at church, we see it in the marketplace. But at home, you had better make sure you are dealing with the issue. Keep the focus on the issue, not the individual, not your spouse. And then what we do, we argue at 9 o'clock in the morning, we fight at 12 p.m., we have another fight at 8:30, and at 10 o'clock we want to make love. You think that can work? And then when the woman turns a blind eye or complains she has a bad headache or she has COVID-19 or something, we say, what's going on here? But if the emotional aspect of the home is not right, and that is one of the reasons why we want to solve our conflicts, because we want to make sure every aspect of the home is moving along, like a well-oiled machine. Yes, we will have conflicts, but in the midst of that, we can still affirm the other person. We can still demonstrate that we love them by the way we behave ourselves. We don't have to be mean, because the conflict is a sensitive issue. We don't have to be mean, especially those married folks who claim the name of Christ. There's never a reason to be mean to your spouse. Now, have I ever been mean to my spouse? I'm sure if you ask her, she would probably say many times. Even when I didn't mean to be mean, I probably ended up being mean, but I try my best not to. And I believe I'm not mean most of the times.
You're not a mean person, but sometimes some meanness may come out. Let's put it like that.
Well, that's a good way to put it, That's thanks for your diplomacy.
Well, that may be for just more than you.
Yeah,
maybe for some others on the platform.
Yes.
If you know too that your partner is not a mean person, and when you see those qualities or characteristics, I would say, coming out, then you probably take a step back and be quiet to say, let that mood pass. Hurry up so that we can move on with life.
Yeah, and as we kind of wrap it up, so we could bring the host back in. Go ahead.
I'd like
Sorry
for you to talk about when you talked about the spouse coming in the house, and you said that I feel disrespected when you come late. You used I messages, so I think we should talk about that before we move on.
Yeah, because when a spouse feels attacked, and if I come in the house and you start saying, you don't do this, you don't do that, you were late again, you promised to be here on time, I feel attacked. Mm-hmm. But if you tell me how my behavior, how my actions is impacting you, how is it affecting you, I hear that differently. I feel disrespected when you come late. I feel hurt. I feel you don't love me. I hear that differently. Mm-hmm. And so, we want to do that. So let me end with this. In the essence of time, in trying to overcome your conflicts, you have to work on them one by one. When you don't, they build up. Now, I don't know if I brought this small, I brought some P rocks with me, and I'll end with this. And some of you may be able to see these P rocks. These are little small rocks. You may see I have a couple in my hands, 4 of them. I have a whole bag full I brought from my yard. These are the small rocks that you put in your drive-through to avoid, the grass growing, and you can roll the vehicle on it. Now, problems are like this. They are small, but if you don't solve it, we put it under the rug. Another problem comes up, we put it under the rug. Another problem comes up, we put it under the rug. Another one comes up, we put it under the rug. And so what happens, they keep piling up. And so they are small problems, but have you ever seen a truck dumped a load of P-rock? It's a high pile. The P-rocks are the same size in the pile, but now there are so many of them because we refuse to solve them. And so I want to encourage you to always try to solve your problem. Decide what the issue is. Pick an issue you need to talk about, one issue at a time. Remember the commitment you made to your spouse when you got married. See your relationship as a long-term relationship. Don't attack your spouse or the person. Attack the problem. Attack the issue. Don't walk away from your spouse without saying something when the issue gets hot. You want to apologize, admit, acknowledge when you know you are wrong, that's okay to do that. And all the other things that we said as you go through this, and you have to talk about it. And so I want to bring our host back into it. We've just touched the surface.
But I like what you say, all the A's: acknowledge,
Yes,
admit,
yes.
and apologize.
And articulate clearly to your spouse what you want to talk about before you get started.
All right.
I bring our host back in.
Yes. There.
Hello. What a awesome topic.
Yeah.
And I guess we didn't had enough time, but a lot of great points. And I can see from the comments coming in, the folks, they really enjoyed it. And someone even put in this comment, say this needs to be televised. So a lot of comments came in. It was great. And
We get us some sponsors. We can truly do a television show, right, Linda?
Yes, right. We're ready. Tell them we're ready.
Right.
yeah.
Yes. So I love this point too, because we always talk about this and how couples really have a problem with making sure that they understand this. And I was so glad that you guys brought this up. Attack the issue and not the person you are married to. And so many times people do the opposite. Okay. Yes. They do the opposite. And we said, we know there's not enough time, but tell our viewing audience how they could get in touch with you. You both are marriage and family therapists. They can get the help. Help is always available. We always say that help is always available. There's always someone who is there who can deal with your particular situation. Don't ever feel alone. Don't ever feel as if you can't get, like you have to stay stuck. So we'll invite the Burrows to let our viewing audience know how can they reach out to you. If they need to get, counseling or therapy, if they need any of that, how could they reach out to you?
Oh, we'd be happy to help because we always want to help couples. And so you can reach us at 351-8311 to make an appointment. That's our office on Queens Highway here in Freeport, Bahamas. But for those who may be abroad, we also have a Zoom link that they can link up with for counseling. We are doing, especially after COVID, we are doing a lot of counseling on Zoom. And so if you want to find us on Zoom, you call the number and we can connect you to the Zoom link. And we would be very happy to do that with you.
Awesome. You also have your presence on Facebook.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
Marriage Matters.
Start following you there as well, so you can let them know about that.
Yes. And Marriage Matters on Facebook. You can also send in questions or get further information on those on that platform. But I also want to say that although we may do couples counseling, there's also a lot of grief counseling going on right now for what has been happening in the world. And so I would say if there's someone out there who feel as though they need some grief counseling, facing after a death of a loved ones, a family cannot, just find it hard to get back together, have been depressed or just can't move on because they're stuck. We also would counsel on grief, counsel depression, young girls, and marital pre-divorce, even after post-divorce. All of that we are finding now that has been on the increase, especially after the COVID pandemic. So we are now doing family counseling, I would say, in all areas. And so not just marriage and family, but all aspects of family life.
Awesome. So that number again is 242-351-8311. So if you feel as if you need help, you're dealing with loss, relationship issues, marriage, family, go ahead and reach out to the Burrows and they will be sure to help you get through this problem. Sometimes it's just, having someone to talk to. It might just be a one session or a two session, and you have all the tools that you need to move on. So don't feel stuck. Don't feel as if you cannot get the help for yourself or for your marriage or for your family. Go ahead, reach out we love you all. We love your marriages. We love our marriage, and we want to see more and more marriages. Being the marriage of your dreams and being that where you could connect and relate to your spouse and having that, even if you would have started not that way, in a negative way, or come from a family where you didn't see that model. So go ahead. Connect with the Burrows. And of course, we want to see you back, right? We have our next session.
So just a few announcements before we leave.
Okay.
We need
we have
to
our giveaway
announce
too.
our
Our winner. Yes, winner.
Yes, and so persons may ask, well,
how do you win? How do you win? Go ahead.
You have to
share. Definitely share.
Yes,
but you have to be engaged.
You have to be at each of the sessions, and then you have to engage. So that means you are putting in comments and everything. Yeah. So our first winner is
drum roll, and she wins Amazon gift card, Miss Stacia Saunders. So she is our winner. And of course, you could go ahead, reach out, connect with us at info@uniquecouples.com. Send us an email, Stacia, and we will send you that Amazon gift card. The wonderful thing about this is it's virtual, so you can be anywhere in the world and you can win. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can win a prize. Okay? Yes, I see. Vanessa wrote that takeaway as well. We love your takeaways, so keep putting them in even as we go through the next sessions. Attack the problem. Attack the issue, not your spouse. Love it.
So go ahead, Stacia, and email us at info@uniquecouples.com.
Yeah, so they don't have 10 minutes or 15 minutes break for this next session.
Yeah,
like you have like 2 minutes.
It's 11:56.
So you have like 2 minutes to come right back in. At 12 o'clock, we have Dr. Glenn and Mistress Keishel Davis, and they will be sharing. You don't want to miss that session on overcoming lack of couples vision. This is going to tie into what Dr. Burrows and Sister Stephanie said with overcoming conflict, and what we did earlier with overcoming communication burnout. So stick around.
Today is Marriage Overcomers, thriving in this season and the next.
Oh, get your workbook. So the link is in the chat. Make sure you get your workbook. It is designed for you to use even after the session is over. And guess what? The sessions are here. You can come back and watch the replay and do your work with your spouse as well. So get the workbook. We put the link in the chat again. Get your workbook.
The link is in the chat.
Okay, the link is in the chat. So get your workbook and join us for the next session.
Yeah, see you guys on the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for having my wife and I today.
Awesome. We'll talk later. Bye.
Yes. Bye-bye.